Thank you so much for watching Landumc Goes There. Please subscribe and hit the like button and the bell notification button. In 1994, we got to experience one of the best movies of that decade, and that was the SHAWSHANK Redemption. It was a prison drama film that was written and directed by Frank Darabont. It stars Tim Robbins, Morgan Freeman, Bob Gunton, William Sadler, Clancy Brown, Gil Bellows, and James Whitmore. The storyline follows banker merchant Andy DeFries as he's convicted of the murder of his wife and her lover, and he ends up getting sentenced to life in a prison that's called Shawshank. His life seems to have gone down a wrong path and taken a turn for the worse, but very fortunately, Andy befriends some of the other inmates there, in particular a character that's known as Red. Andy finds ways over time to live out his life with relative ease, as much as can be expected while in prison, leaving a true message that for all the while the body may be locked away in a cell, the spirit can never be truly imprisoned. The movie is based on a 1982 Stephen King novella that was entitled Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. Frank Darabont took over the script writing and got it all completed in about 8 weeks. But he decided to drop the Rita Hayworth part of the book because everyone thought at the beginning that it was a biopic on Rita Hayworth. During the casting process, the director even received a call from an agent who represented a supermodel. He swore that the script was the best that he'd ever seen and that she had ever read, and that she would be perfect for the non-existent part of Hayworth. Although the film is set in Maine, the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio, stood in for the prison of Shawshank. The building was slated to be torn down, but the production delayed its demolition for a year. After the film wrapped, all the buildings in the complex were torn down, except for the cell block and the main administrative building, which was preserved on a historical basis. In the scene where Andy first approaches Red about the rock hammer that he wants, Red plays catch in the main yard, and this entire sequence took about 9 hours to shoot. Freeman continued to play catch for that whole 9 hours without ever complaining, but the very next day he showed up with his arm in a sling. Freeman also recorded all the voiceover work that he did for the movie before the film was shot. The fact that much of it syncs up to the on-screen action isn't just simple editing. The director would play back the recorded voiceover on the set during each take for the actors to specifically play off of the audio. But that original audio quality was too poor to include in the movie due to a tape hiss that was heard. So Freeman, after the film was completed, had to re-record the entire voiceover in post-production. Originally, they considered Clint Eastwood, Harrison Ford, Paul Newman, Gene Hackman, Robert Redford, and Robert Duvall for the character of the part of Red, Morgan Freeman's role. In the original novel, Red is a middle-aged white Irishman with graying red hair. However, the director always had Morgan Freeman in mind for that role. He loved his presence on screen, his demeanor, and his deep voice. Now, the director kind of cheated a little bit when he did the film, in so that he watched Martin Scorsese's Goodfellas from 1990 every Sunday while he was shooting the film. He just drew a great amount of inspiration from it on using the voiceover narration and showing the passage of time. The mugshots you see in the film of young Red that are attached to his parole papers are actually pictures of Morgan Freeman's younger son. Alfonso Freeman. Alfonso also had a cameo in the film as a con shouting, fresh fish today. We're reeling 'em in." The film's initial gross of $18 million could not even cover the cost of production, which made it a complete box office failure. But in the wake of Oscar nominations and word of mouth, this film took off, and it's considered one of the best films of the 90s. Stephen King sold the rights to his book for only $5,000 out of his friendship for Frank Darabont. They had become friends when Darabont adapted a short story of King's that was called The Woman in the Room. King was thoroughly impressed with the director. They maintained a pen pal relationship and didn't actually meet until this film was optioned. King still considers this to be one of his favorite film adaptations based on his work. And through it all, he never cashed his $5,000 check for the rights to the film. Several years after the movie came out, King got that check framed, and he mailed it back to the director with a note inscribed on it, "In case you need bail money. Loves, Steve." During the scene where Brooks describes to other inmates Andy's meeting with a guard to set up a savings plan to pay for college education for the guard's children, Brooks was originally supposed to have described the encounter while using a string of profanity. James Whitmore, who played the role, suggested to the director to remove the profanities, citing how Brooks, who arrived at Shawshank in 1905, would not have spoken in such a manner on the outside world. The director agreed, and they removed all the profanities from that scene. Now, one of the greatest scenes in the film is when Andy actually crawls to his escape through a sewage pipe. And just seeing him do this on the big screen makes you sick to your stomach. The scenes in the pipe were not too bad because the sludge and products that you see him climbing through was made out of oatmeal and chocolate syrup and a variety of other things to make it look like sewage. But the problem came with the external shot of him coming out of the pipe into the pond. That pond had all sorts of cattle manure completely through it, as it was in a cattle field. Robbins described it as being completely disgusting. That final shot of his escape, with his hands up in the air as it's raining, took forever to shoot because they just couldn't keep the cameras in focus because of the rain. Go back and take a look at this fantastic film. It's one of those that you can watch over and over and never get tired of it. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.